repeat that. For the first, I would say, for half of the history of Zionism, you were dramatically more likely to be a Zionist if you hated Jews.
Yeah.
The founder of anti-Semitism in Europe, Wilhelm Marr, he was a raging Zionist. Why?
Yeah.
Because he wanted to rid Germany of the Jews.
Yeah.
Istotski, the Hungarian politician, in 1878 gave a speech in front of the Hungarian parliament where he said, we need to establish a Jewish state in Palestine to rid Hungary of those filthy Jews.
Yeah.
And the same was true of Arthur Balfour, who in 1905, when he was prime minister, when he was the British prime minister, this is 12 years before he authored the Balfour Declaration, when he was prime minister of Britain in 1905, he sponsored legislation to keep Jews out of Britain at a time when they were being slaughtered in the thousands in Eastern Europe in pogroms. Again, because he didn't want Jews in Britain, because he was an anti-Semite. 12 years later, he authored the Balfour Declaration, thus rendering him the most famous anti-Semitic Zionist in all of human history.
Yeah.
And this continued into the 1920s and then the 1930s. Many of the founding members of the Nazi Party in Germany were also raging Zionists. Alfred Rosenberg, who inspired Hitler himself, was a raging Zionist. The Nazi movement itself signed a partnership with the Zionists. People don't know this history. The Zionist movement in the Havara Agreement partnered with the Nazis.
Exactly.
They were allies until the final solution. The Zionists were allied with the Nazis. Okay, and then if you look at more recent history, who are some of the most prominent, outspoken Zionists today? People like Pat Robertson, people like John Hagee. These people are raging anti-Semites, spreading all the classic anti-Semitic tropes of Jews control the world, and Jews are the financiers, and they have all the power. These people are also raging Zionists.
Yeah. Even Herzl, right? Even Herzl in his book, I think he's depicting a very anti-traditional Jewish type of mentality, right? Because I think he also saw the traditional Jew, the Orthodox Jew, as a reason for a lot of what's going on in Europe and the pogroms and everything. Whereas if you were to become more progressive and more European, right, like the secular Jew, then you have a much more likelihood of being accepted into society. So that would also fall under anti-Semitic in the sense of disliking Orthodox Jews in that sense.
It was precisely because the Zionists internalized the anti-Semitism that led them to Zionism.
Exactly.
They saw all of these anti-Semites saying the Jews are weak, they're passive, they're filthy, they have all these, the caricature of, just a money grubber who is in control and in power.
Mm-hmm.
They actually embraced many of those stereotypes. That is why, for example, they developed this concept of the muscular Jew. Right? Nordau, right? Max Nordau, who, by the way, in the 1880s, publishes many works. He's kind of the number two to Theodor Herzl. And he helped organize the first Zionist Congress in Basel in 1897. He was a popular writer in 1880s in Austria, I believe. I believe he's Austrian. And he's publishing all these works replete of anti-Semitic stereotypes of the Jews. Right, because he believed that the anti-Semites were right. My God, we we have leprosy, we're diseased, we just sit all day studying Talmud. We don't like sports. We're not fit. And so he embraced these stereotypes, and thus he believed in the muscular Jew. And that thread of we need to be strong and we need to be muscular carries all the way to the present day, and you're seeing the ramifications of that anti-Semitic idea in Gaza today. Yeah. And it's a straight line from Max Norkin through to Israeli soldiers posting TikToks on about committing their war crimes in Gaza. It's a very direct line, and it's at the core of the Zionist enterprise is this belief that we need to be strong. We need to because they embrace this idea that there was a problem, that they believed that the Jewish problem was a problem. Right. They embraced the anti-Semitism, which is what led them to Zionism, which is what led them to reinvent the Jew. To reject the idea, the traditional Judaism, the traditional Jewish views around how we don't like violence. We're totally. The traditional Jewish view for centuries, if not millennia, was we reject violence. We're a passive people. We want to study Torah. The Mashiach is going to come through divine intervention, not through human action. And this was the perspective of the overwhelming majority of world Jewry for centuries, if not millennia. And the Zionists threw it all away and said, "No, we reject that. We reject that old Jew. We want to be a new Jew." And so in their embrace of anti-Semitism, they arrived at Zionism.
Yeah.